Welcome back. We have some more magical adventures in store for today as we continue through fairy tales. Woo. So before we get started, I want you to think of any talents you know you have. Now, a talent is something that you do well, such as a skill or ability like skateboarding, playing a musical instrument, creating art, possibly playing a sport, anything. Okay, you got it? You got it? Okay, good. Now, have you ever wished that you had a talent or ability to do something that you didn't know how to do? You too? Oh, definitely. I'd like to reach things in high places for one. Not a talent of mine, but it's okay. It's okay. I'm perfectly content with the talents I do have. Well, today we'll be hearing about a miller who boasts or brags on one of the talents of his daughter. Only, well, how about you listen carefully for a talent that this father claims his daughter has and the problem that it causes for her. And now I give you Rumpelstiltskin. Once upon a time, there was a poor miller who had a beautiful daughter. She was so beautiful and clever that he could not help boasting about her. He just loved to brag on his daughter. One day, the miller happened to be coming before the king, and to impress the king, he began to boast about his daughter. And before he knew it, he found himself saying that his daughter was so amazing and so wonderful. Why, she could even spin gold out of straw. That, said the king, is a talent worth having. Bring your daughter to me and let us see what she can do. When the girl was brought to the palace, the king led her to a room that was almost full of straw. He pointed to a spinning wheel and said, "Get to work. You must spin this straw into gold by early morning, or else." Or else what? Oh, man. The poor miller's daughter, of course she could not spin straw into gold. What could she do? She could think of nothing, and in the end, she sat down and began to cry. And that's when all of a sudden, click, the door opened, and in walked a little man. "Good evening, miller's daughter," he said. "Why are you crying?" "Because I must spin all this straw into gold before morning, and I don't know how." Then the little man came close and whispered, "What will you give me if I spin it for you?" Why, I'll give you my necklace." The little man took the necklace and stood at the spinning wheel, and he spun and he spun, and by sunup, all the straw had been spun into gold. When the king arrived at sunrise, he was amazed, but the sight of all that gold made the greed for more grow in him. So the king took the miller's daughter to a larger room filled with yet more straw and told her that she must spin all of this into gold in one night. Again, the girl did not know what to do and sat down to cry when the door opened and in walked the little man. "Crying again," he said. "So I suppose you have to spin all this into gold too?" "What will you give me if I do it for you?" "The ring from my finger," answered the girl. So the little man took the ring, stood at the spinning wheel, and spun and spun. And by sunup, all the straw had been spun into gold. When the king arrived, he was overjoyed at the sight, but hungry still for more gold. So he took the miller's daughter to an even larger room, filled with even more straw, and said, "Spin all this in one night, and if you succeed, well then, you shall be my wife." The king had hardly left the room when, click, the door opened and in came the little man asking, "What will you give me if I spin all the straw for you one more time?" "I have nothing left," the girl answered sadly. "Then promise me this," said the little man. "Promise me that when you are queen, you will give me your first child." The miller's daughter thought there was really very little chance that she would ever be queen, and so she promised, and the little man set to work at once. By morning, the gold was piled so high that it reached the ceiling. When the king arrived, he was pleased to see all the gold he wanted. He married the miller's daughter and made her queen. I guess she was wrong. In a year's time, the king and queen had a fine little baby. She thought no more about the little man or the promise to him. Then one day, as she sat alone in her room, rocking her baby, click, the door opened and in walked the little man who said, "Now it is time for you to give me what you promised." The queen, filled with fear, held her baby tightly. "Please," she said, I will give you all the riches of the kingdom, only leave me my child." But the little man said, "No, I would rather have a living being than all the treasures in the world." Then the queen began to weep and wail, and the little man felt pity for her. Okay, I'll give you this one chance," he said. "In 3 days, if you can guess my name, then you may keep your child." And then he was gone as quickly as he had come. The queen lay awake all night thinking of all the names she had ever heard. She sent a messenger to ride to the land and collect all the names that could be found. And then the little man came the next day. She tried all that she'd been able to think of: Alexander, Balthazar, Casper, Doolittle, Eggleston, Ferdinand, and many, many more. Sorry. But after each, the little man only said, "That is not my name." The next day, the queen sent servants all around the kingdom to find the most unusual names. And then when the little man came, she tried them. "Are you called Sheepshanks? Roast Rats? Snickerdoodle? Groucho? Wrinklehopper. It's Wrinklehopper." But after each, the little man only said, "That is not my name." On the third and last day, the queen was worried sick. She held her child tight and wondered what to do when, click, the door opened and in walked, no, not the little man, but the messenger the queen had sent in search of names. He bowed to the queen and said, "My lady, as I passed through the woods last night, I came to a high hill, and near it was a little house, and outside the house was a fire burning, and around the fire danced a funny little man. As he hopped up and down, he sang, 'Today I brew, tomorrow I bake, and then the fair queen's child I'll take. And no one can deny my claim, for Rumpelstiltskin is my name.'" The messenger left, and almost as soon as he had gone, the little man arrived. The queen greeted him by asking, "Is your name Jack?" "That is not my name." "Then you're called Henry." "That is not my name." "Then perhaps," said the queen, "perhaps your name is Rumpelstiltskin." "No! No! Who told you that?" cried the little man, and in his anger he stamped his right foot so hard that it went into the ground right up to his waist. Then he stamped his other foot and he went deep into the ground, way over his head, and the queen and her child never feared him again. The end. Okay. I like that. Did you like that story? You did? Oh, good. Okay, let's go ahead and answer some questions about the story. The first being, what talent talent does the father boast that his clever daughter has? What does the father boast or brag on about his daughter? What does he say she can do? Correct. Spin straw into gold. Good. The father boasts that his clever daughter can spin straw into gold, which is very impressive to the Greek king, I might say. Now, what problem does the miller's daughter? Now, the miller's daughter is presented with a big problem from his boasting, and that is that the king thinks that she can really do this, and he's like, I need the gold. I need the gold. Give it to me, all the gold, right now. What? What does she do? I don't know. Now remember, the daughter will eventually start crying because she can't spin the straw into gold, and the little man came into her room. What does the daughter promise the little man each night he spins gold for her? Now if you remember, he came 1, 2, 3 times. So what does she offer the little man the first night he comes and spins gold for her? Correct. Her necklace. Good. Then what does she offer the little man when he comes? What does she offer him next? Her ring. Oh goodness, her ring. Okay, and what is the last thing she promises the little man if he can spin the gold for her? Her first child. Oh my gosh. First child. Yes. She promises him her first child. Good gracious. Do you think that the miller's daughter made a good promise to give her first child to the little man? I don't either. I think that was a bad idea. Well, because you think about it, as she said in her mind, there's no way I'm going to become queen. Even though clearly the king said, hey, you do this, I'll make you queen. So it just didn't seem possible to her. So she said, yeah, sure, go ahead. You can have, if I'm queen, you can have a baby, sure, whatever. Yeah, that was clearly a bad idea. You gotta, don't be promising. Let me not reveal, because that might be the last question. I'm getting ahead of myself. So when the little man goes to see the queen to make a claim for the child, the queen starts to cry, and he feels pity for her, and he gives her a chance to get out of the promise. What does the queen have to do in order to keep her child? What does she have to do? Correct. She must figure out his name. Good. So in order to keep her child, the queen must discover or figure out the little man's name. She must discover his name. Good job. So this brings me to my last question. Now, these are fairy tales, and they're not explicitly fables, which has a rule that it must have a lesson, but some fairy tales do also have lessons, and I do believe that there is a lesson that we can learn from this story. What lesson or moral can we learn from this fairy tale? There's a couple of different ones you might be able to pick out for me. Yep, that's it. But be careful about promises you make. Don't make promises you can't keep. Good. What other lesson or moral might we get from this story? So definitely do not make promises that you have no intention of keeping. Do not promise more than you're willing to commit to. Good. What's the other lesson? Before we get into the promises, what was the beginning, towards the beginning of the story? This reflects the beginning of the story. How did these problems come about in the first place that resulted in that promise? What should her father not done? And what can we in turn also not do? Boast and brag, especially about things that aren't real. So yes, be careful about promises we make and about boasting about talents, especially if they're not real. So what lesson or moral can we learn from this tale? To make promises carefully. Like, think about it. You might have to make good on this promise. promises carefully. And don't brag or boast on talents we don't have. Okay, so like I said, there are a couple morals that we can glean from this story, and that is to make promises carefully. Do not promise anything that you are not prepared to actually make good on. And also, don't brag on talents that we don't have or on other people. In this case, she wasn't bragging on herself, her father was, and it put her in a really bad spot. So yes, honestly, I felt like Rumpel, like, it may have been strange for him to ask for her child in the first place, but he did show mercy and take pity on the queen. So rightfully, he would get mad when he's outsmarted, when he's just trying to be nice. After he made a deal, made a promise, albeit a strange one, for her to then, be able to get out of it, I can kind of see why he would be mad about that. Maybe not mad enough to disappear forever, but hey, that's just me. Alright guys, that does conclude our story for the day. I can't wait to see you next time as we continue with fairy tales. Until then, bye!